Hello and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. There's all kinds of family. We chose this one. This episode 389, Fast and Furious, Lap 15. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe, too, and this episode is brought to you by Move. Move is the original parkour culture magazine that delivers parkour news stories, photos, and videos from around the world. Check out Move for all of your parkour coverage. Shout out to Move Mag.
Well, shout out to Move Mag, and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. We are talking about Fast and Furious 2009. Joe, in the next episode, in the bonus episode, we got some goofs to talk about because...
Okay.
Of the three Fast and Furious movies we've talked about so far, this is the most annoying list of goofs. It just feels like I don't care about these goofs, but there's still some good goofs. I'm not over the goofs thing yet, but
we'll make it through.
There's one scene in particular which when we get to the conversation, I will let you know what the most goofed scene is. You might know, who knows. But anyway, with us today to talk about the Fast and Furious fourth film, we have the host of the Lone Screenplay Nominee Podcast, Matthew Anderson. Hello, Matthew.
Hey, everyone. How you folks doing?
We're good. How are you?
Good, brother. Good.
Yeah, doing good.
So you come to us via Saleya, who, when she was on our podcast a year or two ago, said, I have a friend who loves these movies and would love to be on the show. Is that true? Are you friends with Saleya? Do you love these movies? Please confirm or deny.
I plead the fifth. No. I actually was very jealous of Celia for being on the podcast when she knows I am a bigger fan of this franchise. So I'm really glad to be on the show in of itself to talk about a very stupid but very fun franchise.
Well, we're happy to have you here. So now my question to you mentioned it just a little bit ago, how you became a fan. What was the first of these movies that you saw? Have you seen them all in theaters? Have you been there since the very beginning? What is your history with the Fast and Furious franchise?
I remembered as a little kid, I tried doing like a retrospective on some of these Fast and Furious films. And I think I got through all of them all the way up to like 7. I want to say on my old YouTube page. Don't watch the videos. They're terribly edited and they're like, like they have like the destabilization or whatever it was on some of them where like they'll automatically move the thing around. It's like a pan and scan almost, which it's like, wait, I didn't even edit it that way. I remembered as a kid I saw like a DVD VHS ad for the very first one, and I kept seeing ads for these show up on like, Jurassic Park 3, Hulk, other Universal properties, and I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever. I'll never get around to watching them. I don't know. And I saw a teaser for the fourth one, which is the one we're going to be talking about. I saw a teaser for it, and I was thinking to myself, oh, they're making another one. And not only are they making another one, but they brought in Vin Diesel, they brought Paul Walker back, they brought Jordana Brewster, they brought Michelle Rodriguez back. And then, yeah, it was around that time I was like, I might want to get around to watching some of these. So it was like January of 2009. I saw the first one on FX. And
obviously they're always on FX.
Yeah. I surprisingly enjoyed the first one. I actually thought it was like, for what it was, a very entertaining movie. I was actually expecting the movie to turn out to be one thing. It ended up being like, oh wow, this is actually a pretty fun movie. And then I avoided 2 and 3 on purpose, just because I thought, I've been told that they're like not nearly like as like, not as good as the first one, and on top of that they more feel like side stories, but with how the franchise is going to where they're now like connecting all of these older films together to where we're bringing back Roman, we're bringing back Tej, we're bringing possibility of maybe we might bring back Eva Mendes's character. I just at the time I was just like, I'll get around to watching it. So I only saw the first one at the time at home, and then I saw this one on, it was like Blockbuster rental for Blu-ray. And then I was like, all right, I'll just ask for my dad to get me the first 4 movies on Blu-ray, because it was around August when the fourth one came out on Blu-ray, and then I finally got around to the other 2 films. And then really the first Fast and Furious film I saw in theaters was Fast 5, and ever since then, I've seen every other Fast and Furious film in theaters since then. But yeah, no, they're really fun, and I
So then,
yeah, go ahead.
not to cut you off here, but please, you've seen them 5 and beyond in theaters. You've seen them all. Hit us with those sweet, sweet rankings. It's always confusing.
Yeah.
It's always exciting. Who knows where it's going to go? Either start from the top down or bottom up.
For the record, I've seen, unsurprisingly, I've actually seen all of them at least twice. Whether it was
Good.
well, all of them except for one, which I'll get to at the end probably, but I've seen all of them at least twice. So yeah, number one is Fast Five, obviously the best of the franchise. I did a whole talking point about that or a whole discussion with that on Kale's podcast. Best one of the franchise. It has a lot of great action set pieces. It's the one that really brought a lot of whole new energy back into the car, so to speak, and really just reignited this franchise as like, oh, this isn't just a bunch of like dumb car movies, so to speak. So yeah, and it's got a fantastic finale. I love that finale with the vault sequence. Number two, Fast Furious 7, almost there to being number one, but there's a few things holding it back for me, and obviously that ending is very poignant and powerful for what it is, especially as a send off to Paul Walker's character Brian.
Yep.
Really, it's a really, really solid ending, and I did not expect them to do that. Even from a James Wan movie, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, but it was. Number three, Fast and Furious 6, pretty solid adventure. It does feel a little bit like Fast 5 2.0, where it's a little bit supercharged with a fair amount of sugar in it, but it still does the job for what it is, and it's still like a fun adventure. It's still a really fun movie. Fourth one is my number four is the original Fast and Furious film. Just another like for what it is, it's a fun popcorn movie that it's not only what do you call it? Like a nostalgia for the late 90s, 2000s drive-in films, but it's just again just like a really fun popcorn flick you want to watch. Number five, actually funny enough, is the fourth Fast and Furious film. I'll talk a little bit more about what I have to say about that in the episode and why I think it's not nearly as bad as I think a lot of people are saying it is. But I also agree that it's not nearly the best, so to speak. Number six, Fast 9, the closest Fast and Furious film I could think of that came about as good as the other five I had. And weirdly enough, I've always felt this franchise has worked best when you have Brian and Dom in the same story or working side by side in some way, shape, or form, because there is an interesting dynamic between the two of them, almost like one was raised in, one's a criminal, one's a cop. And I do kind of like that dynamic that they also do bring back in some of the other ones, like, Brian has to, and even in Fast Five, where Brian has to think now like a criminal and Dom has to, do the other way around of like, all right, I got to think like a cop in order to outsmart Hobbs and such.
What's very weird, Joe, is that we've had 3 people in a row who have put F9 sixth. It's just like that's where it belongs.
Just as 6. Yeah, that's very strange.
6 out of 11. So just right, it's the most average movie apparently. There's 5 above it, 5 below it.
So yeah, so Fast 9 is number 6. Number 7, Fast 10. It is a decent movie, and there are a fair amount of things I liked. In fact, honestly, the first half of the film is quite decent for how much of a production hell it was. Like, I think you guys even went into full detail about how Justin Lin was going to direct it, but then he backed out like a week into production, so they had to get Louis Leterrier in. Jason Momoa is probably my second favorite villain of the franchise. Like, I think he's having so much fun with it.
Wait, who's your number one?
Jason Statham easily as Deckard Shaw, because he's having
He's
having a ball with that. Even my brother was like, "Oh my god!" Like, he's having a great time. Like, you see him in that 7th film with him waiting for the cops to show up, and he's having like it was like a steak dinner or something, and he's got a glass of wine. He's having such a ball with that. And yeah, and I enjoyed enough of it. I also think it doesn't. I guess it's kind of like a double-edged sword, that it's like you start off the movie with easily the best action scene of your franchise, but telling it was like a Rashomon. So already I'm kind of on board, but also I can see why this is a turnoff for some. So yeah, number 8, weirdly enough, it's Fate of the Furious. And I think for me, the biggest problem I have with the film, now that I've rewatched it as many times as I had, is that I'm not having fun with it and a lot of it is because you're splitting off Dom. You're splitting up Dom with Dom and his team are, off on their own adventure, but they're not doing anything that really propels the story forward. It's almost like we're stepping on the brakes. This was definitely a shuffling of the cards where it's like, we just lost Paul Walker in the middle of Fast 7. We don't know what to do with this franchise. Like the 7th one, we're surprised even made $1 billion at the box office. Where do we go? And like the only card you have that you could do, which everyone knows is so obvious that even Transformers tried doing it and it failed at it, was make your lead character a villain now. We know it's bullshit. We know he's going to come back to the hero side by the end of the film for whatever reason, saying like, oh yeah, I was actually blackmailed or I was framed to do this or whatever. And it's not fun. It's not interesting. And I think it also helps to, it doesn't help that you're filled with, like, your other team is filled with a lot of Joker characters and there's no straight man, so to speak. Again, some of the action set pieces are good. Even the prison break sequence, I thought, okay, I'm having fun with this. This is actually fun. So yeah, there's that. Number 9, surprisingly enough, is Too Fast, Too Furious. I like the chemistry between Paul Walker and Tyrese Gibson, even though a lot of people have made it a very, you could see this as like a very homoerotic bromance, but I bought them as like long time, friends growing up, almost like siblings to a degree. And when the stunts are practical, they're pretty good. Like the car jumping off the ramp onto the boat was kind of cool. Even the pile up in the garage with like all the cars coming out, but it's just, to me, I came away from it more as like, this is a direct to video sequel that's kind of doing the same thing that the first one did. Again, there's a little bit more things added to it. Again, we're exploring a little bit more of Brian's backstory, and I'll definitely talk about that when we get into the fourth one. One of the things I think the franchise, unfortunately, I mean, it was out of their hands anyways, but there's some things I think you could have done with Brian, if he were still around in this franchise longer than we ended up getting. Number 10.
Joe's 2 favorite movies here at the bottom here, 10 and 11.
Yeah.
We got Tokyo Drift and Hobbs and Shaw.
I know that there are some people out there that love Tokyo Drift, and I'm happy for you guys. I mean, even my brother, my dad, and my grandma, they all love Tokyo Drift. I just cannot get into it. And I think a lot of it really stems from the fact that it's a fish out of water story. Like, it's, an American kid goes to a foreign country. He meets up with, a bunch of, kids who I don't really care at all about, honestly. Like the Bow Wow character, I'm like, whatever, who cares? The love interest in the film, it's just like, okay, yeah, just like any other, teen direct-to-video type, romance. And Lucas Black, I've never really found him to be that great of an actor. In fact, the only time I think he's ever been passable was Sling Blade. And he worked enough in that role, even though, it's very much like, yeah, kid actors are not usually great, but that's all stemming on the directors themselves. And he did an okay job in that film. There are a couple things I do like about the film. I do like the soundtrack for it. Out of all the characters of the film, the one that I did like, and unfortunately he's not in it long enough, was the Han character. Han in the film, like he is so cool and charismatic for compared to the other characters in the film, and then the other one was, I will admit, the cinematography at times can be very slick and pretty interesting, like when Han is drifting around the girl's car as he's trying to show Sean how drifting isn't just to show off. You could actually use drifting for other things as well, and he's doing that to impress some girl off. And yeah, I just find it so strange again that like here I was thinking like, oh yeah, this is like one of the weaker ones of the franchise, and this franchise has found a way to tie itself back to that movie, to where I'm like, okay, there are at least some things interesting about it, that it's tying itself back to what was essentially a box office bomb. And then, yeah, number 11, it's obvious, Hobbs and Shaw. I think it's the worst one, just because it fails to be a Fast and Furious movie, but even when it tries to be a Fast and Furious film in that like stupid, dumb, fun territory, it's too little too late. And yeah, I didn't really care all that much about the movie as much, and it's the only one I've seen once. In fact, I actually watched it on my birthday. It's yeah, and yeah, Tokyo Drift and Hobbs and Shaw feel like the lesser of the Fast and Furious films, just because they don't even try to capture, in my opinion, what I like about the franchise as a whole.
Do you have a favorite character in these movies?
Yeah, actually, it's still the one who has not been on screen, or at least in any new footage since 7, Brian. I've always found him to be the more interesting character, and it's not just because, he's played by Paul Walker, but it's because of the fact that and Paul has been, he has shown his acting chops here and there throughout his career. You look at stuff like 8 Below. He's the one character in this franchise so far who has had a completed arc. And it's one where, weirdly enough, where he started from, it's just that arc that he goes on from the very first movie all the way to 7, where he starts off, sort of this like lone wolf sort of thing, wanting to become an FBI agent no matter what. And he realizes, like, okay, yeah, the thing that I never really had all that much, which was family, is actually something more valuable than having to place my focus on this like career of being an FBI agent. I do like Letty. I like Deckard Shaw a lot. Obviously, I like Han too as well. But yeah, that's probably my favorite characters, Brian.
Cool. So this is our oops, we should have covered that already lap. I mentioned earlier that we're going to cover the goofs from this movie on IMDb's goofs section in our next episode. But what we do, if you're not familiar with the format of the show, is that we alternate Fast and Furious movies with other movies that are related, that have the same characters or same actors or similar themes or whatever. So we might have already covered this already. There's no wrong answers. Is there a movie that is not a Fast and Furious movie that reminds you of the franchise? You're like, oh my God, this is like a Fast and Furious movie, but it's not actually a Fast and Furious movie.
That's a very good question.
Well, thank you so much.
That was yeah. You just bombarded me with a question, and I was like, "Wait, what? I didn't know the opposing team was gonna cross-examine me on the courts today. What's going on?" I guess maybe the Mission Impossible movies to a certain degree. The Mission Impossible films. That's also another one where it's like it started off being one thing, and then they've gotten consistently better and better with not just with their storytelling, but their characters have been a little bit more interesting. The stunts have been incredible, like especially when you get to 4 through 4, 6, and then the recent one 7. But yeah, Mission Impossible is like one franchise I could think of.
Joe, I think this might be our most fitting oops movie, because it feels like the entire time when I'm watching this movie, Brian just keeps getting in trouble. Like he keeps doing things and having to apologize or having to correct himself or having to whatever, like whether it's with the cops and he's getting in trouble with Stasiak, with Dom, with whoever, with Combus and Braga. He's always like doing something, Mia, and apologizing. And I'm just like, man, I didn't think about like, a Hallmark oops movie, but like this might be our most oops movie. I know that you're giving real rankings at the end of this lap, but if you're thinking about like the most oops movie, like I was thinking about your like fake rankings.
Yes.
This is a pretty oopsy movie.
I think I found a goof that might be in the goofs when I was watching it this time. Can I pitch you one and see if it matches one of the goofs? They're eating the Chinese food, and it's Dom, Mia, and Brian. And Dom is like, Dom eats first, and Mia's like, you have to say grace. There's a Corona that's just overflowing on the table.
As in, like, they opened it and, like, they opened it poorly?
It's just all foam. It's just, the whole neck of the bottle is just foam, like, all the way. I was like, is this just, like, an overflowing? I had to rewind it this time, and I was like, nobody's addressing this fully shaken Corona that's on the table, but
PA is about to get fired.
That's what's happening. Yeah.
That might be in goofs. There is one scene in particular that has a lot of goofs. Is there one that you can think of in this movie that would inspire the most people, the most, nerds online to be like, well, actually,
I don't know or not, but I would take a guess when he's looking at the wall of cars, because there's so much. Okay,
wait, I don't know if it's the wall of cars as much as like
it's when it's like what David Park could drive and what I drive. Yeah, that's the first thing I thought. Just because there's so much information in car nerds.
They cannot get over the fact that not everything is like letter perfect about these cars. There are so many goofs. I'm just like at a certain point, I'm just like, guys, stop. Just read the goofs that are already there. You don't have to keep submitting new goofs. They're not new goofs. They're the same goofs. But we'll talk about that next week. Before we get to Matthew, Joe, was there anything new about this movie that you noticed this time, our 15th time through in this podcast?
I have two more things that I want to talk about for this thing. Have either of you listened to the new Kendrick album?
Yes.
No.
Do you know the title of it, Joey?
GNX.
Which is?
It's a car.
This is the car that Dom drives, which is the rare non-Dodge Charger that Dom drives in the series.
Sweet.
Is all I ever wanted was a black Grand National. He's driving a black Grand National at the beginning of this thing. And as I was, spend a lot of time driving back and forth to Delaware to visit Rachel's parents for Christmas, I was listening to Shade 45, and they've been playing nothing but TV off on that station like every 4 songs since it came out. So in the shower after I watched this movie this morning, I was just screaming, all I ever wanted was a black Grand National. Which also, TV Off is a great song. Go listen to that if you haven't. The whole album's good, but yeah. And the second thing that I think, I'm not confirming on this, but I think the apartment building that David Park is in is precisely the building that Dom walks by in the first one. I think that they're the same building.
Oh.
And I never noticed that before, but I think it's very, very close to the garage where he parks the Mazda to get away.
In roughly 3 years. You can do your Google Maps geography.
Yeah, I think I'll figure that out again when we get there in that minute.
The first one is when he's, he puts on the jacket and he ditches his car. Okay, yes. Got it.
I think he's walking right in front of the exact same building that David Park is living in this thing. And I felt very weirded out by my own LA geography that I know only from the Fast and the Furious movies.
It's super helpful, man. Like, I like that, you were saying, what's the name of that restaurant that I mentioned in the last episode because you want to save it for Google Maps. But, like, you also, like, if you go to LA, you're like, oh, this is not a place that I want to go, but this is the apartment building from the first Fast and Furious. Like, we didn't go there, Rachel, but just, like, it's there. She's like, okay.
I told you, like, when my buddy took me to the fucking place that was where the first race happens, and I looked around and I was like, wait, I'm in this warehouse. And then I had to look it up and I was like, yes, I am in this warehouse. It's changed.
Also, in terms of the Fast and Furious minute, I'm excited to get to Dwight's apartment when we get there. But like on Dwight's driver's license, he's born in 1987, last name Mueller, Dwight Mueller, born in 87. But he's like 15 to 16 years older canonically than Brian. They seem about the same age.
Pretty much identically same age.
In this world, if we are to believe this is 2009, he would be about 22, which kind of makes sense, and Brian would be, 36-ish, which seems a little old, but I don't know.
Yeah, feels strange.
Just seems like I'm like 87. Like that's not okay. Sure, whatever.
Yeah, that's.
Then I have a question. Too that I don't think we've ever talked about. Okay, we know Dom races in the first one, and this whole franchise built around NOS, right? Stuff like that. Why is Dom so pissed off that Phoenix runs nitromethane gas? Like, Dom doesn't run just pure gasoline. He's never been like a non-modified car guy. So like, why is he so mad that one guy runs race fuel?
I think it's a reverse situation where he's pissed that the only guy who runs that murdered his wife.
Yeah.
But he keeps calling him a vagina.
I know. I think it's because he's just pissed at him in general. Yeah, I don't think he has a tendency, a gripe with the technology. I think he has a gripe with Phoenix, and he's just like, oh, you run that? Well, only pussies run nitrometh. It's just like, well, he's the only one he knows who runs it. He's just mad at him for the Letty thing.
Yeah, when I rewatched this with my grandma, I was like, okay, yeah, that's why. Like when he's like, hey, boss man, and he's like, what'd you say? And he's trying to instigate the guy so that way he gets the focus on him because he knows that they're all there to die. But he wants to know before. When
you watch this with your grandma, was she eating noodles with the TV really loud?
No. What kind of question is that?
She's like Noodle Grandma from Tokyo Drift.
Real fans know.
Oh yeah, because she's a big fan of it. Yeah.
Matthew, this is your 5th favorite Fast and Furious movie. It sounds like you pretty much like it, but don't love it. But what about this movie stands out as favorite moments, least favorite moments, head-scratching questions? The floor is yours. Take it wherever you want.
Really the biggest one, obviously the opening is a lot of fun. And what I find funny is that up to this point, every entry from the first to the fourth one, they always have that one ridiculously insane moment in the movie where it's like, oh my God, they're actually doing this. Like the first one was Dom flipping his car over after he hits the truck and then, barely makes it out. He's bleeding. He broke his arm. And then you have with like the big stunt with Brian and Roman and such. And the big stunt here that I really liked a lot was obviously the gasser the gas heist, where they're taking all the fuel from the driver. I think that's a really fun sequence. I also liked. I know it's in the trailers, and even watch. I think this was also one of the things I was like, I gotta watch the first one to know if he's kidding or not. But it's when who we find out is Braga. I can't remember. It was Campos, I think it was.
Campos.
Campos
is
Braga.
Braga.
Campos is Braga, yeah. And I find it really funny that he's like, so you two know each other? He's talking to Brian and Dom. And Dom's like, instead of actually really like, oh, yeah, no, yeah, he's a cop. He's like, no, he used to date my sister. I was watching the trailer. I'm like, wait, is he kidding? Like, is that just a way of being like, I can't tell him you're a cop, so I'll just come up with some bullshit. And then watch the first movie, like, oh my God, he actually did date his sister. I didn't know that. And it still cracks me up when I watch it, honestly.
Oh, I mean, like they're that's the long running Brian and Mia are eternal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and no matter what happens, how they get separated, they always come back together. I also it's ridiculous. Another ridiculous mode of the film is that there's no. I don't care how strong you are, unless you got to be like a souped up bodybuilder, like Dwayne is, where maybe you're taking steroids. I don't know, but there's no way that you could hold the guy down. And then it was like he like Dom just pushed the lever on the guy for the guy when he's trying at the garage when he's trying to get answers out of him, and he's holding the chain with like the engine like barely hitting barely on top of him. I'm like, there's no way you have that much strength in your body to do that, unless you're holding it for a couple of seconds. But I don't know. And really, there's another sequence. Obviously, the race that they do with the whole mile race or whatever with the whole GPS thing. I do find that a little bit funny with some of it, where he's like, where he's like Brian's yelling at his GPS, and I'm like, yeah, that's an average response that people get when they're trying to get from one location to another. They're saying rerouting. And great. On that race though, great. I guess like clever callback in Fast 9. Where Dom uses the whole too soon thing, and where it was Jacob uses the call, boosts his nitro forward, and Dom realizes, yeah, you're too soon, man, you should have done it later on. Brian realizes that too, but Dom knows how Brian is going to do it. So in terms of like Dom goes first with the nitro, and then Brian does his next. And Dom realizes, no, I know what he's doing because I did the same trick on my brother. So I'm going to smart you by, rubbing into your car so that you'd spin out of control and I win the race.
Yeah, that's a classic Dom Toretto move.
Yeah, it is. And it was like a nice, callback for what would be in Fast 9. I'm like, all right, so some of you guys did do your homework on this. That's nice.
Well, this is also a callback to the first movie. Like it goes from 1 to 4 to 9, and 9 is just sort of it chronologically takes place before 1, but yeah, it's just the classic Dom Toretto.
Yeah, oh definitely.
Cool
and even Brian learned his lesson
Dom's
too. Of
cool
like
secret.
Yeah, and even Brian was like, yeah, I learned my lesson from not boosting too early. I got to make sure you go, someone else goes first, so I can, zoom past them. I know a lot of people want to give this film shit for this sequence, but that finale in the mine chase sequence, I'm not gonna lie. Like I've seen a handful of action films that are poorly edited and poorly shot. Especially when they're on green screens.
Just
like
a
that.
handful.
Well,
Lucky.
I'm toning it down a bit. I've seen more than that. I was stunned rewatching it and thinking to myself, wow, this is actually a lot better edited and communicated than I had remembered ever seeing it all. But I was thinking to myself, wow, I could actually see what's going on. I could see, like how far apart Phoenix's car and Brian's car are when they're, he's trying to outmaneuver him, and then he's like, oh shit, I'm in a corner. I'm trying to move out of the way, or I'm just going to go right through, this cardboard hidden exit or whatever. And I was really impressed. I was like Justin Lin, he's like a very decent workman-like guy, where he knows how to direct some of the action set pieces, which are pretty fun to watch, even in the later films too. But he also knows how to communicate with something that's very tight on action and tension, how to do it in a way that makes you engaged with it enough. At least that's how I felt with this set piece. And then another scene I actually want to bring up, which ever since I saw this film back in 2009, this is all before like Paul's still around and such, and all these things.
Yep.
I don't know why, but for some weird reason, I had a feeling that, and I knew that this fourth one was like set before the third one. I knew it was the prequel because you see Han in the opening, but I had a weird feeling that this movie was not only just a way of saying like, hey, we're bringing back our original cast members, but we're also like, as we progress through this franchise, we will be killing some of them off. And I thought, well, all right, you already killed Letty off. And I, for some weird reason, thought Brian was going to get killed off in that car wreck he has in the movie. And then once he kicks the door open and he's barely alive, I'm like, oh my God, he's actually alive. I honest to God thought he died just because he didn't show up in Tokyo Drift. Dom never mentioned him at all in any conversation, said that, all right, so maybe he's probably dead. I don't know.
I will say about that final scene through the mines, Joe, I felt so bad for just regular drug dealers who had to use those mines next. Like, these guys fuck up those mines so bad, the tunnels so bad.
I know.
And just imagine, like some the next batch who's gonna like have to bring people through, like they're gonna get killed because they can't
construction
even get through.
company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so much. We talk about how much damage they do to civilians.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what about the drug dealers and their minds?
Won't someone think of the drug dealers?
It would be.
Won't somebody think of the drug dealers?
Small business owners.
It would be funny as this race is going on in the tunnels and like literally in the distance, there's there's a group coming in for the drug bust. I know they only do like nightly runs and that's it, but it would be funny if like, oh yeah, there's like a crew that's that's coming right in. And
the day shift,
the day shift
is
yeah,
coming
the day
in.
shift comes in, and they're like, "Ah, shit! The area's closed off. How are we gonna get out of here?" Then boom, they're surrounded by all these cops and helicopters. Yeah, but no. Other than that, yeah. And also, I do crack up at the line with Brian where he's like, if you didn't cheat, I would have won that race. And Dom's like, you hit your head hard. And I'm like, okay, that's still pretty funny. And in a weird way, it is kind of like a reverse ending to the first movie where Dom is the one. In the first one, Dom is the one he injured, and because of Brian, he's given an opportunity to run away. And in this one, Brian is the one who's injured, and he's telling Dom, "You got to get out of here." And he's like, "I'm not running anymore." They are trying to bring back some of that original dynamic duo that we've been missing since the very first one.
Now, Joe, I don't remember who Kim picked in the last lap for the head of Etion from this movie, but I was thinking, what if David Park? We never actually really know.
We just get a quick glimpse of David Park. That would be a good guess. I could see David Park, but he's the middleman. But this would be the ultimate Campos as Braga. Braga is Campos. That he is so good at being the head of Etion. He has to go undercover as a minion
boss
for a random drug dealer.
Well, that's so okay. So Campos Braga is working for Cypher, as we learn, right? Like that's all part of the thing we learned in a later movie. Cypher theoretically could be working. It's a different thing, but could be working.
But she's
for
working for Etion, yeah.
But then underneath Braga, is David Park, who is actually
the head of Etion. That's what I'm saying.
Man,
that would be layered. I like peeling back the onion there. That's a good thought.
I also, another note that I have here, Giselle calls Brian Blondie, which I think is kind of cute because we have so many, like I feel like the entire first movie we have...
Roman calls him Blondie in 6,
We got
right?
Bullet, we got Blondie, we got all these different things, but then here she, like, not affectionately, but just calls him Blondie, right? So that's...
I don't think I've ever caught that one. Good catch.
Matthew, is there stuff about this movie that you don't like? Like, it's not your top 4. Is that just because the other ones are better? Or are there things about this you're like, oh, like, that's just not for me?
Yeah, I think really the biggest one to come away from it for me personally is that the whole revenge angle of it, when I first saw it, I'm like, I don't really like this idea of, like, we're going to kill off a major character. And I get it. Like, I think there was a whole there was like a whole scheduling issue with Michelle Rodriguez or, them killing her off and then having this be this whole revenge thing. I was just like, I don't really care about this because it's like and it's weird. And it's funny enough. You mentioned what I didn't like about it because I think that element of the story really ties itself back into what some of these other post-production, writer strike, hell type movies were, because this was written around the writer strike that came out in 2007, 2008. And a lot of them were doing sort of the same thing where it's like the woman you loved is now killed and now they're going out for revenge. Like Quantum of Solace did that. X-Men Origins Wolverine did that too. It's lessened a little bit now that I know that they've done a very clever, almost too clever of a callback, and I mean this as a compliment. In 6, where they tie it back into where Phoenix didn't kill her. We like maybe it was accidental, I don't know, but they make a little callback with Phoenix says, do you remember Letty's face? Because I don't. Last time I saw it, it was burning, and I'm like, that's a nice tie-in to the 6th one. She was catapulted away from the car when it explodes in a very ridiculous way. Yeah, and so I like that. I like that they're tying it back into this movie, and similar way I've already said before about how Tokyo Drift is tied back into this franchise multiple times. I will admit, though, it's not nearly as strong as the first one was, even back then, because I've always felt to me that first one had a little bit more going for it. Maybe it is, it could be like nostalgia of like, oh yeah, these are the kind of movies that were released around the 2000s with the soundtrack, and it is essentially Point Break. Yeah, so that's really like another problem I have with it is I just don't think it's nearly as strong as the first one is. And even how you could very much tell this is the Chris Morgan and Justin Lin are trying to, we couldn't give you what you wanted. Let's try to go back with this on Fast and Furious 4 by bringing back the stuff that you do like about the first film. And they realized after that, okay, it's not a great improvement, but it's a foot in the right direction. A stepping stone for what's to come for greatness. What we got with like 5 through 7, because 5 through 7 really nailed it down in terms of like, we know what these films are. You know what these are. And you could even tell watching, even just watching the bloopers on this, you could tell the whole cast and crew had fun making it. Honestly, when I see, I don't know about what your guys' ranking is or where this is on your list, but I do not even think this is even close to being the worst of the franchise. Because I think, like I said, I've already stated, there's much worse or lesser entertaining movies in this series. This is nowhere even close to being the worst for me.
This is a movie that, as you understand, is one of the 3 or 4 that are sort of divisive, sort of polarizing. This is one that that Joe specifically was worried about having to watch over and over again, but it's grown on us. I think this is a very important movie in the franchise. We talk about this a lot on the show. It's a pivot point moving from the earlier, as you're going through in your rankings, like the standalone movies into something more cohesive, more world building. And even though this isn't as exciting as later movies, it's still, pretty good. I will say that you were mentioning this in comparison to other movies and comparing to James Wan stuff in 7 and, Justin Lin stuff in other movies. I think one thing that I noticed, Joe, that I know that we've talked about vaguely before, but I don't think ever specifically linking between movies, but it seems like there was a scene in this movie where there's like the people shopping in Mexico, like toward the end of the movie, they're all just sort of like outside like what looks like a strip mall or something. Yeah. And this like caravan of cars like races through and they all just like stop and look. It's a scene that I've definitely seen before. I don't know if I've ever paid attention to it, but I think there's something really good about the way that Justin Lin captures onlookers. Like we have his kid in Fast 5 on the bus and the people as the safe is being brought through. Like there's something that grounds us. Yeah.
There's something crazy that's happening outside and you're just a bystander. Like you would be in awe or shocked as it goes by.
And I think it's a small thing, but I feel like later movies, like I don't get that sense from like the
magnets.
The Rome. Yeah, exactly. It's just like
this kind of shit.
There's people in the city, but it's also like we also get in 10, it's like, well, no one was harmed. And this is just like, okay.
Exactly.
But here it's like, even if people aren't harmed or whatever, or there's no like newscast saying that people are not harmed, it feels like there are people living in this world that could be harmed or are part of the thing or part of the scene or whatever. I think it's a small detail, but it's a nice detail.
I agree. I like it a lot.
I think even just having the idea of having like a muscle car and an import car driving alongside each other, that has always been stuck in everyone's brains of like, or at least the Fast and Furious fans of like, whenever we think of Fast and Furious and we see that, it's almost like it's Brian and Dom working side by side, with the first one where we have that car race at the end. We have the big climax at the end of this one.
Now, Matthew, we have a couple more segments, a couple more things to do, but before we get there, is there anything else about this movie in particular that you want to cover that we've not covered? Weird things, favorite things, things that make you confused or angry, questions you have about the movie, anything else specifically about Fast and Furious before we move on?
I do love the future callbacks that would go back to this with like Brian breaking Stasiak's nose. Again, a nice, wink to the audience of like, remember that moment from the other films. Other than that, yeah, and it was nice to see that Brian, actually took ever since the first one, as Dom said, Buster became a gearhead, and it's like, yeah, like, over the years, Brian himself has also tried improving, himself on being like a better engineer, so to speak, and it also helps too if you watch the prelude to or turbocharged Fast and Furious prelude or whatever, before the second one to show like, oh yeah, this is like a montage of Brian just becoming a gearhead, and he's changing out everything and learning about the import car and how to make it better so he can win more cash and such. So I thought that was cool.
Without further ado, then, would you like to find out which Fast and Furious character you are?
Sure.
We have. That doesn't sound very excited.
Yeah. No, I'm curious. I am a little bit curious, but like, all right, sure.
We created a quiz. There are 7 questions, 6 answers per question. You can either briefly explain why you pick your answer, or you can remain a man of mystery. Are you ready? First question, how fast are you? NASCAR, roller coaster, Lamborghini Murcielago, Toyota Prius, Vespa, or Razor scooter?
What was the one before Prius?
Lamborghini Murcielago.
Okay.
Swerve.
Probably a Toyota Prius.
Question number 2, you know it's coming. How furious are you? The Hulk, Kylo Ren, Christian Bale on that one movie set that one time, Mel Gibson, Charlie Brown, or Jack McBrayer?
I'll say Bale.
We're having a barbecue. How are you helping? Manning the grill, saying grace, kicking back with a beer, babysitting, being the entertainment, or sneaking a snack?
Manning the grill.
You've got time to kill. What are you doing? Are you grabbing a bite, working on your car, hanging with friends, drinking a beer, working out, or doing some work on your computer?
Probably hang out with friends.
Describe your wedding. I'm never getting married. It's just me and my partner. It's us and our families. It's a backyard country affair. Everyone I know is there. I don't remember.
I don't remember.
You just won the lottery. What are you buying? Your own garage, a private plane. I'm gambling it all away. My childhood home, a fleet of cars, or a new life.
New life.
What is your drink of choice? Belgian ale, Corona, something fruity, water, whatever's cheapest, or just one of whatever you're having?
Whatever I'm having.
I think you're going to be happy. You are your favorite character. You are Brian O'Connor. Your confidence might seem misplaced at first glance, but you have the skills to back it up.
Oh, wow.
And if you ever find yourself in a situation you can't drive, punch, or shoot your way out of, your smile and quiet charm will usually do the trick. When it comes time to make a hard choice, you will always follow your heart and choose the path that protects your family, and you drive like the wind blows.
Nice.
So congratulations, Matthew. You are Brian O'Connor. At one point, you were Locke.
That's fun.
You were Ryan Reynolds, which I was like, oh, I don't know if we ever had him as an answer.
We haven't had one.
But
I don't think so.
You are Brian. So congratulations.
I keep forgetting Ryan Reynolds was in Hobbs and Shaw. That's how forgettable that movie was to me. I'm like, oh yeah, he's in that movie. I forgot.
All right, we've got one more thing to do. This ain't no 10-second race, a.k.a. Boy Do We Have a Podcast for You.
Boy, do we have a podcast for you. Come and check out our show. Yeah.
So this is where we go on Twitter.com, X.com, the MAGA app. And we find any post from anyone about these movies, about the franchise. We respond to them and try to get them to listen to our show. I have ones from both of you, and I also have 2 from me. I'm going to do one for charity. But
okay.
Matthew, can you please, I'm going to use the one you got from Meredith. So if you want to pull that one up, please read who that tweet is from, what the tweet is, and how you would like us to respond to the tweet. And we can also help you out a little bit there if you want us to.
So this is from Meredith Loftus, who was on my podcast talking about one of Wes Anderson's films, Royal Tenenbaums. And the tweet was essentially, her writing an article about her loving the Fast and Furious films. Despite her, enormous love for this franchise, she thinks that it's time for death to matter again.
We still think there's a need for justice for Han, and we love the Fast and the Furious movies just as much as you do. Boy, do we have a podcast for you. Cool? Does that work?
We also want to see justice for Han in this franchise, and boy, do we have a podcast for you talking about all the Fast and Furious films.
Cool. Perfect. Joe, hit us
Perfect.
with yours.
Okay, mine's from Nick, in parentheses, movie fan at Nick Tozo. He tweets, working on some bars. Something, something Fast and Furious, something, something blood, call me Nosferatu. And all I want to start it out with, all Dom ever wanted was a black Grand National. Okay, so be like, I think you and Kendrick were on to something. Boy, do we have a podcast for you.
Perfect. Now, I found two.
Okay, which
Both
one you playing
about
for
Dwight.
charity? Okay.
They're both terrible. Like, I don't like either of them. I was just trying to find a tweet about Dwight because I was just like, I was trying to find
How
other
many
things
are there?
that
Like
was-
6 in the universe?
I wrote down, there was one that I was just like, oh, this one's perfect. Then I realized that we tweeted it. And I was just like,
Oh,
no wonder I
fun.
like this one. It's because it's one of ours. I'm going to do, this is the one I'm going to do for real, I think. The one I'm going to play for fun, for charity, is from Dates in Movies at Dates in Movies. May 2nd, 1987, Street Racer Dwight Mueller was born. Movie is Fast and Furious 2009. And I'm going to say, sounds like a national holiday to me. Boy, do we have a podcast for you. I would do that for real. I like that one better, but they have 55,000 followers. I doubt they're ever going to see this, but I want to put it out there. Sounds like a national holiday. Boy, do we have a podcast for you.
Perfect. Excellent.
The other one is from My Name is Grant at Jen Iron Ikis. Sure.
Okay.
Ironicus.
Sure.
Dwight is a two-scene character. I don't know what the point of this tweet is, but I guess that's also the point of Twitter. Dwight
Okay.
is a two-scene character in Fast and Furious known for his ridiculous haircut and foot fetish. His actor is best known as the voice of Beast Boy. And then
Yes.
there's a gif of Dwight likes this foot a lot. I'm going to say, sounds like he's got to come back to the franchise. Boy, to have a podcast for you. Neither of these are going to go anywhere, but I just want to, I
Nope.
want Dwight visibility to go up.
You want Dwight foot visibility.
Yeah, this is definitely a character that that Tarantino would write in his films for sure.
100%.
Yeah, it's like,
Yep.
hey, there we go. We got another like, oh yeah, what a weird connection to Fast and Furious Tarantino movies with his foot fetish.
Matthew, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing
Yeah,
all
thank
of
you,
your
bud.
thoughts about these movies. Can you please hit us with anything you want to plug? I know you got a podcast we mentioned earlier. Let us know what you got going on, where people can follow you, find you, so on and so forth.
Yes. So just to make it simple, just go to my link tree. You'll find me on @Matthew995. Link. You can not only find my podcast, my social media stuff, but you can also check out some of my projects I've been a part of, not just for my time at in filmmaking at Stevenson University, but you could also check out some of my other stuff, such as my other podcasts I've been on for other people's shows, like you guys. I did a written review for Film Festival Today a while back. It's the only one I've written so far. So yeah, you could find all my work there as well through Linktree @Matthew995.
Cool. Well, thank you once again for all of
Thank
that.
you, brother.
Joe, our next episode is Another Life in the Fast Lane. By the time this episode's out, we will have already recorded that because I got a work trip next week. So get your emails in for the next episode. We got Life in the Fast Lane number 39 covering Tokyo Drift minute number 5 coming to you next week. I also want to give a very special shout out to our patrons for supporting us. Please shout out to Nick Burris, Alex Ellenen, Justin Kleiman, Brian Rodriguez of High School Slumber Party, Wes Hampton, Jerry Robinson, Dan the Duke, Hayden Renato, Di Donato, Michael McGann, Lane Middleton, Lindsay Lewandowski, Nate Milton of the Kings of Sport, Jason Rainey, Tom Price, Mike Guy, Josh Buckley of Whole Lot of Wolves, Michael Moser, Christian Larson, Taryn Newone, Aaron Willows, Natalie Absolute, Randy Carter, Josh Goularm, Alex Walsh, Josh Luther, and Jessica Collins, a.k.a. Montez. Thank you all for supporting us the $5 a month level or above. And for all things Too Fast, Too Forever, go to cageclub.me, facebook.com/TooFast2Forever, or @TooFast2Forever on all the socials. Email us for a future Life in the Fast Lane at family @cageclub.me. Check out our Patreon page at TooFast2Forever.com and our store at cageclub.me/shop. And come back next week for a Life in the Fast Lane. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe, too.
That was Matthew Anderson, and we will tell you all about it
When we see you again.